So, Hannah, I think perfect to hand over to you where you can talk about how you're doing that in several different buildings in the same street.
Yeah, so amazing to hear all these amazing stories. So I'm just going to share some pictures of our journey so you get a feel for where we are and pick up on some of the patterns really that have started to play out as we take on more buildings. So I'm co-director of Nudge Community Builders with Wendy down in Plymouth, and we're focused on this street here, Union Street. It doesn't look like this all the time. This is one day a year, and really where we started. So we closed the street for the first time 11 years ago. And really wanted to find a way to bring people together, to recognise the strengths in our community, and to celebrate an area where a lot of people love living, but it's judged by a lot of different people as well. So we really wanted to sort of shift those perceptions and it started to lead on, so it's where it all started really. At the time, me and Wendy were volunteers, we both live locally, and it led on to lots of questions about why there were so many empty buildings. So 25% of the buildings along the street were standing empty, and people kept on saying, why don't they do something about it? And we were like, actually, we could do something about this. Gradually over time that happens. So this is our first building, Union Corner, and this is really where we cut our teeth and we learned a lot of the lessons, and you'll see that play through with our other buildings. So Union Corner was a building that had been standing empty for 25 years. We brought it back into use into a garden on the left, so that building had burnt down. And then the space inside Union Corner is for any local person that wants to try something different. So in normal times, it gets used for all sorts of things, but most recently it's been, through COVID, it's been a really important space for people to come and get food and clothes and sort of urgent support. But what we realised was we quickly had an impact in that area. So we'd already put graphics up and we'd kind of got to know some of the empty buildings, why they were standing empty, why the landowners weren't doing things with them, and started to kind of unpick really some of the really kind of complex issues that hold the street back. And so we gave ourselves permission, and we talk about this a lot, and you know, we are massive advocates of other people giving themselves permission to start to make change in their local area. So this is what Union Corner looked like in the early days. So you can see we had like this massive wall to sort out, and we'd already started to put some of the graphics up. And there was just red tape after red tape after red tape, and we started to unpick that. So we started to understand, you know, as soon as we say we're from the community, people are very risk averse, and they were like, oh, you can't do this if you thought about this, and there was like barrier after barrier after barrier, and we had to kind of gradually unpick that. And in hindsight, all of these things, so, you know, proudly bringing people into the space when we had no electrics and things like that, and, you know, using bunting to kind of make sure that people could access the space safely and things like that, are things that taught us about how to manage that risk, how to be brave, and how to push back on some of the standard ways of doing things, and to really think about like what is good enough and good value for our local community in a way that has real local impact, rather than going kind of for sort of real high spec developments. So this was one of the major moments where we really started to kind of grab hold of what was happening on the street. So we'd crowdfunded for Union Corner, and we needed to remove the shop front, and we just had the world and his wife queuing up to tell us how complicated the removal of this shop front was going to be, to the point where we were like ready to give everyone their money back. We had a very dark December meeting in Union Corner, and we were like, we're not going to be able to manage this. We're going to have to, yeah, give everyone their money back. But then we kind of regrouped and we were like, actually, do you know what? We can bring some people around us. And in the end, we demolished the shop front on a Sunday very safely in about 45 minutes. And it was a real mental shift for us. And then we started to see the impact that Union Corner has. So we don't own Union Corner, we rent it. And actually we realised quite quickly that although there's a load of amazing local impact that happens through it, the real beneficiary is the landowner. And that's what started us on our route of getting into how the economy works and all of that sort of stuff, which I would have never have thought like 3 or 4 years ago that I'd have like a set of favourite economists and stuff like this. But basically we saw like the strip club nearby closed down, the gentlemen's club closed down, the landlord started to rent the buildings around Union Corner to better people, and we were like, who actually really benefits and how could we do this in a different way? And so that's what led us to set up Nudge and bring those traces through. So this is an example of how we started to pull the traces through our work. These are the graphics that you saw on the front of Union Corner originally. They're now in the toilet in Union Corner. So we kind of play out all of these different things, and all these letters are from theatre posters on the street. So really kind of rooting what we do in the history of the street. So we moved on and we bought the Clipper in 2017. We bought it outright with a mixture of loans and a very scary moment. Both quit our jobs and we were like, right, if we're going to do this, we're going to go for it. It was a 24-hour pub and it had been standing empty. And there was a huge amount of work to do, but we started to get to grips with it, but quickly picked up those patterns again. So how volunteers were contributing to the space, bringing care to it. This is the urinal that we repurposed in the building. So it's like all those layers that make a community-owned building different and feel different, but also operate economically very differently as well. So for the Clipper, we did a share offer. So we've got 165 investors, and it was incredibly hard, but also incredibly important. We're a community benefit society, and what was at the heart of what we were doing was that collective ownership. And you know, it's still my favourite thing when people walk through the door and say, "Oh, I own a bit of this." So it's that real sense of local ownership. And then we repeated things like, so all the patterns on the front of the Clipper here are rooted in the history of the street and the architects of the street and things like that. And this is now in use as 2 flats, and on the ground floor is a cafe space and market space for people that are setting up their own businesses. And then again, we sort of, so these are the toilets again. There's definitely a theme of toilets with Nudge. So really capturing the story, all the volunteers that contributed to move that building on into its current life. And then on the street, so we always kind of look at how things play out on the street for local people, and it can be the smallest thing that has the biggest impact. So this is our Advent box, which is a tiny little box, and local people have keys and they can check it every day through December and see something different made by local people. We pop up on spaces where, you know, there's a lot of antisocial behaviour and people are saying that they don't feel safe. So as well as kind of looking for that sort of bigger economic impact in terms of securing the buildings, it's also really important that we start to shift how the spaces in the street feel, and that's where we listen all the time. So we don't do a lot of formal consultation. We're local, obviously, so we're around all the time, but we're always listening to the conversations and to the things that people are saying, and then drawing those into our work and sort of revisiting them in different ways. And this was last year at Union Corner. So just kind of having some reflective time after obviously a really tough year, and finding different ways to bring people out onto the street and starting to layer up on the street as well. So this was the first kind of more formal thing that we've done on the street, these canopies to create a space on that same bit of land. So just kind of all the time starting small, building up and really understanding what has most impact. So we've now moved on to the plot, which is this building. That's where I am now. I apologise if it's a bit loud. There's people randomly playing ping pong outside. So the plot is another tricky building that we took over in December 2019. Again, playing out a lot of the kind of learning from the Clipper and Union Corner, just having that confidence to go in and not worry too much about the condition, but thinking about what's possible, what gets people in, what gets people involved. So here we've filled the space with greenhouses and sheds, and it's all about taking sort of an allotment space that you need to get your business going. And at the back we've got the food court, which is Fabolani, and supporting sort of female BME entrepreneurs, but bringing a whole kind of new sort of opportunity for our community to experience as well. So this is the plot at Christmas time. And I guess one of the things that we've picked up is that quite often when you talk about ownership and the economy and things like that, it all gets very serious quite quickly. We like to kind of weave in a lot of joy into what we do, a lot of colour, and really find ways to sort of like draw those dots down really from those big sort of economic issues that play out into our community down to what could actually like make a real difference right now or next year in our area, and it's constantly reaching it back to that. And then at the end of last year we bought the Millennium Building as a joint venture. So what we're starting to realise is that because of the complex things that are holding these buildings empty, we're having to operate a bit like a private developer, but with ethics, but also kind of exploring different models and being open to that. So this building we've bought 50-50 with a private investor, and who brings a whole load of different skills to the table and supports us to make something that's really viable. And so, yeah, hopefully that's given you a quick sort of canter through the street. I guess what I would finish on is around thinking about that there's space for everyone. So as we grow, there's a real responsibility, I think, for community organisations that are doing this kind of thing about how you create the steps for other people that are coming up behind you or alongside you, how you remove the barriers for others. And that's the kind of thing that we're starting to do now that we've got plenty of buildings ourselves. It's like, actually, how do we maximise the local economic benefit for our community so that we create routes for other people to come in alongside us. So I hope that's given you a bit of a feel for what we're doing, and I look forward to chatting to everyone later.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I love those pictures because it looks like the sun is always shining on Union Street, and like you make it look like it was so easy. Like, I know what the plot looked like before you started ripping it apart to make it as beautiful as it is. You can see a bit of that with Union Street. So just that sheer kind of, I don't know what it is, like, that just makes you go in and go, yeah, we can do this. We're just going to pull that out and then just, you know, kind of clear it up and make it happen. And then just creating these really beautiful spaces.